Hello, everyone. Welcome to the When at Work podcast. You're with your host, Julian Leahy, and we're going to do a ordinary audio podcast because we had some technical difficulties, but we're not going to let that stop us because we've got the fantastic Kerry Powell, a former DC attorney, on the show. Welcome to the show, Kerry-Ann.
Julian, what a joy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And you've done all sorts of exciting things. You're a speaker, and you also used to be a DC lawyer, which sounds amazing. And I really want to get some stories about that. Tell us a bit about what you're doing now, and what you've done in the past, and how did you get where you are now?
Yeah, wow, that's a long one. But I right now I own a business called Trafalgar Strategies. We're a business strategy firm, and we consult with small and medium-sized companies, anywhere from 100 employees and under. And we help with helping companies really think about the chaotic things that are happening in their organizations. We work primarily with the owners, founders, and CEOs of the companies, and we help them kind of address the chaos and make it not chaotic so they can thrive. So that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. But I guess the journey to this really was, I always I cut my teeth on strategy from very, very young in my career. And as I have evolved as a professional fundraiser, an attorney in Washington, a lobbyist, I realized that in order to really accomplish any big thing that you're trying to do, you have to have a strong strategy. And oftentimes people sort of like, entrepreneurs, people just kind of jump into something and say, yeah, let's do it. And without sort of thinking through what the strategy is going to be like and how we're going to measure the execution. But so I think that's really the common thread, I would think, probably through most of the work that I've done over the years.
I can imagine people, they've got this great idea, they get into it, it actually starts working, things start getting busy, and then they say, look, we've got some problems. Is that sort of how it happens? And
Oh, yeah.
what is
Oh,
the
you've hit it
story
on the head.
what are the problems that people have that you think they could quite easily avoid?
Well, Julian, you hit it on the head. People start and everything's really great because you don't really know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Until you get into the thing and you realize. So, obviously I work with business owners. So some of the top four things that pop up why people begin to call our company is usually is a cash flow problem. Um, that's the biggest thing. Second would be they're unable to scale the company. They've been in it for a bit. They may be growing the company, but they're unable to scale it in a way that makes it sustainable. Oftentimes, another chaotic thing that pops up is team. They're unable to either build a strong team or their team currently is not performing up to par. And then I guess the fourth one would be that the owner, the founder, the CEO is unable to walk away from the business without feeling like it's going to implode. They're wearing too many hats, which of course leads to burnout. Those four things that I just mentioned, though, are people often think, well, that's the problem. So let's address that and let's fix that. However, what I've found and what we've found as a whole is that um, those are what we call symptoms of chaos. They're not actually the chaotic problems. They are the symptoms of chaos. And it's your role, and what we try to do is help folks identify what are the underlying problems that are causing those particular symptoms. Because we often, you think you go to the doctor, Julian, and you have a headache. It could be multiple reasons why you're having a headache. It could be that you went to a rock concert that night and you stood by the speaker, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be that you drank too much last night and you just need to kind of, get some hydrate yourself. Or it could be you could have a tumor. One of those three could be it, or many other reasons. It's really important, I think, when we have these symptoms of chaos popping up in our businesses to really stop instead of just saying, well, let's go hit this by the pass, like, oh, what we need is a new sales team or whatever, addressing it, assessing what the problems are, and being able to identify what are the core issues that are running in the business. And we've identified about eight of those.
Oh, okay, we'll get to those in a moment. Do you find that sometimes when you're dealing with a company that there are certain issues that are kind of almost emergency level which you need to deal with straight away, and then maybe start looking at what you can do to fix everything else going forward?
Oh my gosh, Julian, absolutely. I often say there's sort of like, once you sort of look at the problem, okay, the symptom, whatever the symptom is that's showing up and that making you have some pain in the business. And by the way, those four things I mentioned, I mean, there could be others, but those are the four main ones. They happen to also be the top four reasons why businesses fail. So, they're not things to play around with so much. But let's say someone says, hey, the issue that I'm dealing with right now is a cash issue, cash flow. We're making profits, we're doing this, but we just have this negative cash flow constantly. Um, and we then assess and say, okay, here's a couple of reasons why this is happening after we've done an audit and been able to take a really good look at the business. Say the issue is there's the business model problem. And then let's say the vision of the company isn't clear. And then let's say the production stuff is not happening. Okay, so that's the reason why we have a cash flow problem. It's really important to assess which of those three is like fire, 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 fire. Okay.
Yeah.
And be able to say, all right, look, the other two, you know what, we got to address those. But right now, our priority has to be you have your business model does not work, will never work. The profit margins are way too thin, and it's not ever going to happen, no matter how much money you put into production or how much you go into creating a better vision for the company. It's never going to work based on this model. So, I always often say, you keep running your business, right? Business 1.0, you keep doing that because you still got to produce product, you still got to fulfill client work, you still got to do all the things. And then you take some time and you look at company 2.0, you look at this, you fix this problem, and then you move it into the company, and then you just keep going to each problem as like sort of like triage, right? You go to each problem as they are most urgent, fix it. Either you're going to create new systems, you're either going to create new policies, or either going to burn the whole thing down and move it in, however you're going to do it, and then move it into the current existing company. I don't think there's any real time when you have to really burn your company down and refix. I think you can run it in its way that it's doing it while fixing it, but it requires time. And I think one of the problems with this particular methodology that a lot of business owners will say is like, I don't have the time. They'll say, I'm sitting here trying to just continue to just like to meet payroll, fulfill client work. I don't have time to address this, burning building that's happening over here. And I think that is where you have to kind of help people understand, look, this thing is a cancer in your business. If you don't address it now, it's not going to be fixed. And I think that's really where the challenge hits.
Also, I think if people are looking to exit, from their business and sell it off, they're going to need to have a lot of these processes in place so it looks healthy going forward. Is that a big motivator for a lot of your clients? They want to get everything organized to be able to find a buyer?
Yeah. No, yeah, it is a motivator for some. Truth be told, Julian, and it's unfortunate to say, and you'd be surprised when I tell you this, but a lot of people haven't addressed their exit strategy yet. They kind of put it off as if it's like retirement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, it's out there in the future that I don't have to worry about. I believe that creating an exit strategy at the same time as creating your business plan, your business vision, your, whatever the thing is at the beginning, fundamental things of the business, because how do you know what your plan is to exit? You build a business differently depending upon what your exit strategy is. But nonetheless, those that have created an exit strategy or are beginning to think of an exit strategy, they do get more motivated to fix the problems because they're like, well, this is not a very attractive company. I can't sell this for multiples. I can barely sell it for what it's worth.
It's almost embarrassing, like when people come over and you frantically need to tidy up everything, I don't want anyone to see how we operate.
Yeah, it's like my mom. She'd always want to clean the house when someone comes over.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say, I feel like the cash flow is probably one of those emergency problems, and then the processes. So can you give us some examples of some companies that have had processes that were just breaking down, and some of the things you were able to implement to really stabilize and reduce chaos?
Yeah, one of the one comes to mind because this company had many, many problems that even the owner, God bless her, didn't realize was happening. But one of the ones that we focused a great deal on was so it was again a bit of a cash flow problem. That was one of the underlying processes that needed to be fixed was the way in which she collected payment from customers. They had usually long-term contracts with customers, and most of these customers have been around for a bit. Therefore, obviously depending upon who you're selling to, some large customers will pay you, say, net 90, right? Which means you're expected once you invoice a 90-day payment. And then some customers, I think 90 days is about as long as you can. But I actually had a client where she was selling into a very large blue chip company. It was almost a year before she got paid for the invoices. So that was a whole mess. We had to fix that. But this particular company, they did not have a process that was systemized enough from the very beginning of the onboarding until when things really started getting haywire, that would make sure that she was collecting those accounts in a systemized way. So she had so much money on the books that needed to be paid by clients that she was basically a bank, Julian, frankly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she was a credit card, because the amount of clients that were in arrears. And I don't see anything wrong, I wouldn't want anyone to misinterpret what I'm saying, where, you can negotiate with your customers if they are having, if it's better for them to pay a little later and then, whatever. But you have to have some process in place where it's just a regular thing. And so one way to do it is to just to be able to know, okay, how early before a bill is due are you sending out the bills? Is there a clear expectation of a late payment fee that's going to automatically be added on to the bill? Are there incentives for paying early? And I know this sounds so simple. However, the amount of money that we were able to collect for after putting in those systems first, she was able to collect really did solve, 70% of her cash flow problem was
Yeah.
because of the lack of processes around being able to collect from her customers. And we're not talking about, collections. We're talking about just being able to get her current customers to pay on time. That
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah, I mean, and you've got a situation where your clients themselves have cash flow problems because they're probably in chaos, and if they're able to get away with delaying, your bill, then they will, and it's one of those things that it can get away from you, and then all of a sudden everyone's got this expectation that you're being lenient on things, and then it must be hard to actually crack down. How do people sort of feel insulted when you start, demanding them pay their bill?
Well, I think that when this particular client was first having to address it in her business, she has a high touch company, consulting company. She works very closely with the owners, and she did feel a bit of a way about sort of bringing the hammer down, as you might say. So it was, there had to have been some conversations, some difficult conversations, but that's what business is. You're always having difficult conversations because it's a exchanging of resources for something else, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you had emotional feelings, but I mean, everyone she's working with is business owners. So I mean, or CEOs of large corporations, and so she's not working with them. She's actually talking to their accounting departments. And so it's really not, if you have a policy and it's in your contract, it's an issue of whether or not you're going to follow the contract in the end. And I think sometimes people feel really so connected to being viewed a certain way or being liked or something like that, that they're unwilling to put in those kinds of policies. But there's other policies that are uncomfortable as well. Even when you decide how to how you're going to even have your sales process. Oftentimes people kind of create their own, like let the prospect run the sales process. And it's like, well, it's your business. People need to know how they're going to purchase from you. You don't walk into a grocery store and say, hey, we're going to negotiate this milk, price of milk, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, you need to know really the truth. What are some of the things that make your business operate? Create those policies and systems in place and help people know how they do business with you. Again, I'm not saying it's easy, particularly when you've had allow for a pattern of say late payments or whatever the case is happening in the business. The same way, if one of the problems that you're dealing with is the way that your team is operating, it's difficult to have those. That's one of the big ones. I went with a client, and we were looking through and trying to figure out, or assessing what the problem was, and I finally realized, wait a minute, this is a team issue, not the team themselves, but the way she was leading the team.
Right.
There was a great deal of trust that was broken, and there wasn't really, there was just a lot going on, and just being able to have the difficult conversations with the folks in the team was difficult. So I think a part of this is what I'm saying here is having difficult conversations is a part of doing business. And if you have a hard time having difficult conversations, this is a beautiful time to begin to address whatever the underlying issue is within oneself that's causing it to be difficult.
Yes, absolutely. And you've got a fantastic resource, which is called The 8 True Culprits That Are Causing Chaos in Your Business. Do you want to just quickly run through the 8, and then we'll tell everyone how they can get a copy of that for free?
Yeah, absolutely. So these are things that we have found over the years, working with small and medium-sized companies, as to why we think are really causing those symptoms of chaos we spoke about earlier. The first one would be, it's a very fundamental thing. We just really call it, this methodology we call the big idea methodology. And it's the first one is really the fundamental things that make the company work. And these often include, believe it or not, what is the owner's vision of their own lives? What do they want, right? Sometimes you'd be surprised. Folks just don't know what they want. So they're not actually aligned. What they want in their life is not aligned with the business vision. And oftentimes people say, well, I'll just tweak what I want in my life so I can align with the business vision. And that's just not the good way to do it, right? You look at what it is you want in your life. Because remember, most companies, up until very, way past 100 employees, do they actually end up having a CEO that's not the owner. Typically, what ends up happening is the owner might still be engaged in the company as a, chairman of the board or something like that. Okay. So even if the company is growing and you haven't quite hired leadership, that's a professional leadership, then what the owner or founder wants in the business is, in their life, still does need to be aligned with what the business is. Because in the end, the business is there to generate value in the end. So that's one thing. Then, of course, there's the business vision part, which I think is really important to understand. This is still in the basics, right? So you're kind of still trying to understand what are the values of the company, what is the core strategic goal, and also what is the kind of purpose of the business. These are some fundamental things that are still in the first slide. So if there's problems happening there, then there's going to be problems somewhere else in the business. And then, of course, we have, sort of an exit strategy. We have the, how the products are formulated and what's the business plan. These are all just sort of the basic number one things. So we'll go in and we'll just do an assessment of that. If everything is okay in that area, then we move to leadership. And we call it inspired leadership. It's not just, are you leading well, but are you leading in a way that's inspiring people, all the stakeholders, to continue to be aligned with the business. When I think about leadership, I think of leadership of oneself, leadership of one's team, leadership of one's organization. So that's inspired leadership, and we talk a bit about that in the book. The third thing is we start looking at the team. And we call that, what we call that segment is we call Rockstar Team. And I like to think of really inspired leadership and Rockstar Team as a Julian, are you hearing noise in the background? I'm sorry.
That's all right. I got dogs too.
Okay. You can, okay. I think of Rockstar Team and inspired leadership as almost one coin, just two different sides. If your team, if you're hiring well, meaning you're hiring self-motivated people, right? And you're putting them in the right seat and you're putting them on the bus, then if they're not performing well, it's you. And people, owners and founders and CEOs hate that because they're just like, don't tell me that. That's, it's the team's problem, right? But if there's a problem that we're assessing the team and we've done all of the check marks and it's not performing well, it's you. So that's why I like to think of it as two different things. So those are the three things, some of the fundamental things. Then we've got inspired leadership. Third, we've got rockstar team. Then we move to the third tier, which is the strategy. What is the strategy for the business? Are we looking at, are there systems and processes in the business that are working? Then we're looking at whether or not there's a culture of exceptional execution of the strategy, okay? And then the other part of that ring is whether or not you are optimizing and innovating in a way that supports the business's growth. So we've just gone through 7. We've got the fundamental stuff, we've got leadership, we've got rockstar team. We go to the second ring, we're looking at strategy, systems and processes. We have a culture of exceptional execution, and if we're optimizing and innovating, because they're two separate things within the company. Those are the other things we're looking at. And then once we've sort of addressed all of those and assessed them and graded them and seen if they're, working well, fire, it's going well, green is good, yellow is not so good, red is like, problems. Then we're looking at the success mindset. And that is the last ring of what we would call the 8th ring of the culprits. If any of those things are not working, you've got a problem. And it could be either of those 8 problems. It could have been there could be a missing gap in either of those 8 issues. You want to address those, and then you'll begin to see some of those chaotic things begin to dissolve.
That sounds very comprehensive. And so the book is called The 8 True Culprits That Are Causing Chaos in Your Business. If you want to get a hold of that copy of that for free as an ebook, go to nobusinesschaos.com and just enter in your details, and you'll be able to get that, because that sounds like a really excellent resource, Kerry-Ann.
I tell you what, people often say it can't possibly be those 8. Yeah, it really could be. I mean, it really could be.
Yeah. I mean,
it's very unlikely, Julian, over the 10 years I've been doing work, it's very unlikely that it's something other than that.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like you've covered everything. And the hardest one, I think, would be when, you've got to tell the actual person that has contracted you for help that you are the problem. I can imagine, there's a bit of ego involved there. It must be hard for some people to admit, that they need to improve themselves.
Julian, I'll tell you what, we as humans have strong egos, and we attach our identities to many things. And as entrepreneurs and business owners, we often attach our identity and our self-worth with our ability to be good at what we do in our businesses. So it's very difficult to say, oh, it's me. However, that to me is a superpower. If someone can be able to be aware enough to be able to say, yeah, it is me. I need to fix this.
Yeah.
That's someone who I know is going to build a business that's going to last.
Yeah, they can change if they admit that. Awesome, Kerry-Ann, that was fantastic. I'm going to wrap it up. Don't forget to get hold of that book. Sometimes you will get some really awesome, books and resources that could really help you. This book is more than just a normal kind of lead magnet. this is a really good resource. It's very comprehensive. So get a hold of that, nobusinesschaos.com. And thank you very much, Kerry-Ann Powell, for coming on the show.
Julian, thank you for having me.
No worries. I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks, everyone. See you next time. Bye.